faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. It's your host with the most, your GM Jared, and today on my 10-minute review, I'm going to be reviewing the 2014 powered by the Apocalypse World engine, World in Peril, a tabletop role-playing game that lets you live out your superhero fantasy. So stick around, put your capes on, and let's dive into it. Thank you for sticking around, my superhero comrades. Now, Worlds in Peril, like I said before, is powered by the Apocalypse engine. You might know this system if you've ever played Dungeon World. The Dungeon World came out in 2012, and it's basically a 2-die-6 system or 2d6 system, where if you're trying to do something, it's a very free-form game. So if you really like free-form games, this is the game for you. So let me dive into it. I got 10 minutes to get this done. And unlike The Flash, I'm not as fast. So first and foremost, Worlds in Peril. I personally like this game a little bit more than the other superhero tabletop games that I've looked at. So obviously one of the big ones is Mutant and Masterminds. That's a huge name. If you've ever played superhero tabletop games, you've probably played the Mutants and Mastermind system. So unlike Mutants and Masterminds, Worlds in Peril is more freeform. So where Mutants and Masterminds kind of quantifies everything, breaks it down. It's a great system. I'm not nagging on it. It's a great system. Worlds in Peril is more of a free-form system. So basically, when you're building a character, you come up with a concept of a superhero. So let's take, you know what? Let's take Captain America. So your concept is super soldier, right? And that's your concept. Boom, done. You talk to your editor-in-chief. So that would be your GM. So I would now be your editor-in-chief, and basically you kind of sit down and you talk over your powers. Once you've kind of talked about what powers you have, so Captain America has super strength, super agility, and enhanced human peak athleticism, recoverability, all that jazz. You kind of sit down and you get scores. So you see here, this is the character right here, character sheet. Everything's reversed, so I gotta remember that. This is the character sheet right here. So you have maneuvers, investigate, protect, influence, smash, right? Real simple. Maneuver, agility, stuff like that. Investigate, Batman. That's it. You're a detective. Protect. This one's a little weird. It's how can I say? Protect is like your willingness to jump in and defend the helpless. It's more of like it's a weird stat. It's like how much you're willing to kind of put yourself into the mix. Influence, this is your charisma, and smash is Hulk smash. It's just fisticuffs. So as you'll see on the character sheet, there is no help points, and that's really important because you have conditions and minor, moderate, and critical. These come about when you, like I said, you make those checks with the 2d6 system. So you roll 2d6, and let's say you get 6 and below. In that scene that's happening, in that little scene that you're doing, the editor-in-chief kind of takes over and can give you a minor condition. It can become dangerous if ignored, but not right away. So the editor-in-chief could say like, oh, you've been punched back and you cracked the wall behind you. And maybe, so that might lead to a leak or something, or a flood, or gas escaping. So it can become something, but it's not terrible. Moderate is take it -1 if you do anything involving this, and that's going to be like, oh, you sprained your ankle, so maneuver. Or you've taken like too many hits to the face, so your influence goes down. And critical is a -1 to everything, and that's like you're like Thanos just punched you in the neck, and you're kind of like, oh, like it's rough. It's real rough. Like I said, when you're building a character, your code name, right? You name yourself whatever your code name is, whatever. You're working towards your achievements. That's again a very ethereal concept. You want to put that down. So maybe you're trying to protect the city, protect your neighborhood, It could be like protect the planet, right? It depends. Origin, that's a real simple one. They have origin base, and you could be an alien and stuff like that. It's all very superhero-y. Nemesis, this one's kind of weird. I don't know why they give it to you right away. When you're building a character, right, all of this is done in world, and you build it with your team that's there. So you're basically building the Avengers right away, or the Justice League. And you're building that right away, and that leads to your bonds. And your bonds are really important. This will have a positive or negative number, and it will have a threshold. Now, the more bonds you have, usually the less power profile you'll have, but bonds are really cool. You can kind of spend them to increase or to increase your role by a level. So like I said, in the Apocalypse system, you have a 3-tier system. So you have a 6 below is a failure, like a super failure, a critical failure. 7 to 10 is a success, but something negative happens. And the next, the highest tier is like 11 plus is you succeed without a negative, and then a 12 is a critical success, and that's like awesome. It's super cool. So if I were to roll like a 6, but I spent a bond beforehand, boom, I now bump up, and I don't get that critical failure. I can get to the next tier, and while something bad does happen, it's not as bad as it could have been, right? So when you're building your power profile, Captain America, like I said, boom, your simple stuff, your simple abilities is I can throw my shield, super strength, super running, really well hand-to-hand combat. I'm a soldier. Difficult would be like we all saw in the movie, Captain America was like holding like high levels of super strength, like holding on to a moving vehicle and holding it stopped. Stuff like that. Borderline, that's like a little bit pushing yourself. So Captain America is just an enhanced human. So you would have to think in that realm. Possible and impossible, those are really simple. It's like throwing your shield, and impossible is like throwing my shield and having it hit like 57 people in the room all at once. Stuff like that. So that's your base character sheet. Like I said, you don't really have hit points. You just have these conditions over here. And once the conditions kind of go to a very high level, you're out of the scene. You can die, and we'll get into why you can die. Right, superheroes die, but they do come back. And that is important because as you play the game, you'll open something called a book. Like I said, you'll open, so you'll have your origin book. Right? So they obviously, comic terms, your origin comic. Your drive book, this happens as you complete tasks. So you can only really have, there's on the character sheet, only a spot for 2 drives. So my assumption is you can only have 2 drives at a time. But as you kind of get these drives, they only trigger once you've kind of reached a certain level. So I'll show you. So prove myself. This book opens when obviously another character goes out on a limb for you, knowing it's going to be very detrimental. So something dramatic in your story has to happen for this to kind of open. And then you also get these special abilities that just kind of tack on to your character as you go. They don't replace your powers, but they get to be more with your character. Improve myself, right? Like we will hold, when you're faced with overwhelming odds, you make an inspiring speech. And once you kind of accomplish your drive, it closes, and then it allows you to open a new drive as you progress in the story. Now, progression, how does that work, right? Like, can you keep getting powers and stuff like that? Yes, you can. Remember, like I said, bonds are important. Bonds are super important. Sorry, I'm moving my chair. Bonds are really important because, again, remember I said you could like burn these bonds to increase your abilities and how you play. That's something that's really important, because as you play, you can burn the bond with like Peter Parker always missing his date with MJ. Like, oh, something came up, I couldn't make it, and then finally she gets fed up. She's like, you know what? I ain't dating you, sucker. And that's it. And you can get those bonds back by leveling As you level, you can increase those bond numbers from, again, negatives to positives. Or you could get them while you roleplay, which is fun because you could really try and get that back, through heavy roleplay and stuff like that. So that's really cool. Now, next up is kind of like my critiques here and there. The book, this is really a great book. If you're looking to do a superhero kind of game that allows you to live out those young fantasies, this is more along the lines if you're not looking for a lot of rules. So again, this is very rules light, and that's its appeal. That's what I really liked about it. It was very rules light. It was like kind of come up with powers. You don't have to buy powers. You just need to talk to your editor-in-chief and make sure it's kind of on the scale of what you want to play. Again, this is good for one-shots if you're in like conventions and you're looking to play a game and you want to get away from fantasy and you want to get into something more actiony. This is kind of it, right? Like you want to save the day and punch, Dr. Evil in his stupid head. This is the game for you. It's very simple, very fast. Again, it's the Apocalypse system, so we all kind of know that one, where it's a very 2d6 system. Boom, things happen very quickly, and it's more narrative-based. And that's what I feel superhero games should be, more narrative-based than they are number-based or rules-based. I like Mutants and Masterminds a lot. I like those tabletop games, but they have their place. Those are for like long-term campaigns, lots of story, but also rules kind of define everything. This one is like, yeah, like let's play a superhero game. We binge watched all the Avengers, and we really want to jump into something superhero-y to kind of like, cleanse our palate from the high fantasy game we've been playing with wizards and warlocks and stuff like that. So hopefully you've enjoyed this review, this 10-minute review. Hopefully I've hit under 10 minutes and didn't ramble along. I think I'm at like 18 minutes right now. So with editing, hopefully it's shorter. Oh, come on, Steve, make it smaller. But with all that, it's your editor-in-chief here, and Excelsior.